All right, guys. I want to be in a positive mood, and I was on a few channels talking, and people were very, very concerned about our cornerbacks, and in a lot of ways they should. But from my standpoint, what I was saw, what I see as a possibility, is that they're going to be put in situations where they're not going to be as critical a piece as they would normally be in, say, a man heavy defense. Man heavy defense. Remember with Flores, you needed elite corners to follow these receivers all over the field. But what it looks like, we're morphing a little bit more into a zone, possibly three safety looks at times, rotating the coverage, basically taking away the high, uh, closing the middle, allowing our corners to jam in and make those tackles, but slow things down so the front, which we've invested heavily on, does its work. So I want to dig into it. I want to be positive. Sorry, I haven't done a podcast in a couple of days, but a typical Curtis event. I was watching Limitless with my older son. Asked him to take the dog out. The next door neighbor didn't tell us that there was a hole in the fence. She's a big, over 100-pound dog. In a matter of a minute, my 60-pound dog, who's got issues with him, found that hole. I'm in my underwear. I hear my 14-year-old son screaming. I hear the old lady with the dog screaming. I run over there, and the two were locked into a death mode. No one there to help me. I get my hand chewed up, among other things. It was an ugly situation. So I was recovering. Thankfully, it wasn't disastrous. It wasn't good. So I'm sorry about not being able to cover. But I want to get back into this podcast. But first, guys, like, subscribes, the comments and views and all that stuff is appreciated. So can you help me out with that? I'd be very grateful. And if you already are, thank you. So if you look at a football field, I'll show you this graphic here. You have to understand that the 12th man on defense is the sidelines. Cornerbacks are always using those sidelines to help them out, whether they're man, whether they're in zone. And it makes these out throws, because they tend to be wider, harder to achieve. Although guys like Mahomes and Allen got the arm and they can buy the time with the legs, to hit those, they're more difficult. But those sidelines help a cornerback out, especially if they're in the zone. You can see here that middle of the field, if we're playing zone, we're playing nickel. We're going to be playing lots of nickel. I'll get into it deeper. You got your high cover two, you close the middle, and you force the outs. Now, we've seen that like nonstop with Tua for a long time. And yes, his arm isn't good enough to hit those deep outs where other quarterbacks can. And so that inhibited our offense. But you can see how it limits you. And so when this critical deep and middle, if we can close it off, and we've got corners who can jam, slow things down a little bit, play smart football, keeping their eyes on their keys and making the tackle, it's going to lower the responsibility of these cornerbacks. And you do it all the time. Linebackers, you give them certain zone coverage. We did it with guys like Baker, and we did it with guys when Van Ginkel was here. You put certain assignments for guys that can maximize what they can do. And so we're not always going to play zone. There's going to come times where we have to play man, and there could be concerns there, but I'll dig into it more. But if we're able to get this front to do what it's supposed to do, we have a lot of personnel that can pose problems if some of this back end personnel actually shows itself to be good. So closing the top off, closing this middle, forcing the outs, and making sure we get the tackles will force them to matriculate to the red zone, as you've seen with us. And when we get to the red zone, the speed won't be as much. And the three safety look, this great front, and probably the best linebacking group we've had in a while. Dotson and Brooks prototypical linebackers. They can cover, they can run, not so much attack, stack, and shed. But when you've got quote unquote, a very good front, this helps things out. And we've got a lot of guys in this front to help us out. And so if we could trade, instead of a 7-3, this offense that we've had, which is bringing back most of its personnel, McDaniel's been here 4 years. They should be putting on the points. Now, I'm not saying they are. If we get into a shootout, some of these things can get exposed. But if this offense does what it's supposed to, Weaver can be a strategician and tactician and move these pieces in. We could see them not being so much of an issue. And then we have to hope that some of them step up, obviously. So when we get into the this little graphic here, obviously you look at it on the face. Fitzpatrick high. He struggled with the Steelers. He wasn't terrible, but that's not where he's best at. Iffy, Melifonwu, he's not really best at it. Davis, I think, works better at that. But you got Dotson and Brooks. You got your front, Phillips and Grant. Grant's going to be a key. When does Phillips get 100%? Kohu, maybe he's the nickel. And I think I've studied for a while, and I talked about how he struggles in man mid to late clock. So if you're pulling a lot of this man off, then Kohu will have some of those issues taken off his table. Duck, you got to hope he steps up. You got Marshall, you got to hope he's something. Yeah, there's some hope here. Don't get me wrong. But if you're a zone coverage in a 20 by 15 area, it's a lot different than if you've got the whole field in man. Obviously, Smith is a big red flag. He's a little too slow coming out of his breaks for a corner. He's too small for a safety. And I heard him speak the other day, and he just seems off in some regard. And then you add the injuries. But there's a lot of guys on the table here that we can put in. And if you look at this graphic here, you can see Ashton Davis, he makes plays. He can play that easier high safety look. You could have Melifonwu in the other one coming down or even playing high. He's got some speed. He's got some size. Or Dante Trader, who we drafted to fill in there. And then Fitzpatrick could come in and play that nickel look. And then I'll show you, he can get deep. He can go all over the field, create confusion. And then Kohu, you trust a little more, could play that boundary at times, along with Duck or Marshall. You got Isaiah Johnson, 6'3", super talent. Will he step up? Artie Burns, he could play, just not a lot. You don't want to overexpose him, but he's a guy you can kind of trust. And then you got Marshall. There's a lot of pieces here. And do they step up? Is Weaver able to utilize all those? But when you put Davis at the top and you can kind of trust him a little bit to play that free safety role, it does take some of the burden off. Where Cam Smith, if he's not in the equation, which I don't think he's going to, it does ease the burden. Now, if you look at this graphic here, you can see the when you're playing cover 2 high, it's very difficult to break it if they're not biting. And so you got the purple circles at the top. You play a cover 2, maybe roll into cover 3. You got the middle closed with, say, Dotson and Brooks doing what's done to us. They play high leverage. There's a takeaway to pass. Run that football. Our front is supposed to handle it. And then when you got Fitzpatrick in there, he was originally a nickelback. And he can play the role. He can either drop to the middle, drop to the top. He can help control that run game along with Melifonwu. Again, it's going to come down to Duck taking another step forward. But if Duck doesn't, Artie Burns can fill some from snaps there. And then Marshall, who the guy covered the number 1 receivers. He's a physical talent. He could jam. He does have issues. So there's opportunities here to flesh this thing out and allow these boundaries to, okay, you could throw the football there. You can get the catch. We're going to tackle you and make you be heavily consistent. But if we jam you and slow it down, and you got Chubb and you got Phillips and you got Sealer, Robinson, Grant, and other guys this pressure should be able to get to you if we can get you off schedule on first and second down. And so the ability to be consistent, limit the issues of obviously our cornerback group in zone a lot, rotating guys, dropping different guys, jamming guys, allowing this pressure to work. And if you make the catch, let's get to that red zone and get you a 3 instead of a 7. So let's take a look at the last graphic I got here. And obviously Smith, red flag. I pull him off the table, honestly, and look at the rest of these guys. To me, Marshall, he's a big guy. He's tall, he's big, he's fast. He's going to leapfrog Smith, no problem. Phillips, when does he get in here? But this, we suck at tackling. How many missed tackles have we had over the years? When you're playing zone, the tackling is a major part. Not biting and leaving your zone, knowing the framework, the boundaries of that zone, but tackling is a major part. But in the end, you could see, obviously with the great Tampa too, they just dropped those linebackers to the middle, close that off. They would have the safeties play high and allow this front and the linebackers to come up and fill with great speed when necessary. And Brooks has proved he can do that. I think he's a very good find for us. And so is Dotson, although not nearly as good as Brooks. So this front, Grant maturing, Phillips coming in is going to be critical. But it's going to come back to this defense, I think is going to be good. Maybe not great, but it's going to go back to McDaniel. It's going to go back to Tua. It's going to go back to this offensive line. It's going to go back to $60 million Waddle and Hill, adding in Westbrook and Achane and Washington to make this offense hum. Put the points on. Run that football, obviously, inside. You don't run the football inside, then you're going to be seeing that a cover 2, high linebacker drops, and it's going to be difficult. But if we can get this offense, and we should, and not should because we will, but with everything invested, with everything involved, this offense needs to take the lead. And this defense just needs to be tough and just needs to be consistent. And when it get to the red zone, limit. So I don't think we should be overly concerned yet because football's unlike any other sport. The coaching, the tactical maneuvering, offers more potency than any other sport. And I do trust in Weaver a lot because he was really shorthanded in a lot of regards last year, and he did a good job. And I saw him operate tactically as well as strategically. Not always perfect. Fangio, you could see he struggled too in some areas with his pass defense wouldn't hold to their assignments. So that's it, guys. I'll get back to you more. My body's starting to heal. Sorry about the delay, but I'm old and the battle I won, but it did take more out of me than it did 10 years ago. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Curtis saying, be well, go Fins. Curtis out.